Tommy Heffron, veterinary consultant here. In today's video of concepts worth considering, I want to be a small bit controversial, but not too controversial. Thinking about people. Again, these videos are inspired by thinking, traveling around and having discussions with people. Agriculture, particularly livestock production, which I'm heavily involved in, and I believe animal protein and livestock have a huge role to play in human health and our future, and we're always adapting and changing to the challenges. But when you travel and you're actually involved in agriculture, one thing that keeps coming up is the question of getting people to work in agriculture, maybe working on farms, and it is a challenge. And I was in Spain 2 weeks ago or so, and it was a challenge there. You go to the UK, and here in Ireland I see the same thing. So what are the opportunities? Well, for me, maybe I'm in a minority, but I think food production and livestock production is a very exciting space. As the human nutrition story evolves, I'm a believer that animal protein is a key component of our diet. If you look at metabolic health and a whole range of things, I think we talk about the environmental challenges of ruminants, but as we measure and understand more, there's opportunities to mitigate them, but also to understand from a grazing perspective the potential of livestock. I think there's positive benefits, particularly when you look at the outputs from farms. So anyway, I won't open that whole can of worms, but I think agriculture is quite exciting. It's evolving, we've loads of challenges. That means that we need lots of solutions. We need people, and we need smart people, and we need people in all levels of agriculture. So when we look on farm then and we think about, well, people are a challenge in getting people to work on farm. Is there opportunities? Well, I was on a farm recently, and this is not the first time it's happened, that people outside of agriculture, people that haven't worked on farms before, is there a potential that we're not looking for there? Do you always have to be born in a farm to work in a farm? And I think no, some of the best farm managers and people working with livestock that I've worked with have never actually been born in a farm. They've been trained up and they get involved. Why? Because I think there's so many people actually, when they work with animals in farm production systems, actually enjoy it. Some of the work, like every job, it can be monotonous, but there's a real challenge to working with livestock at different times in the seasonal system, the different challenges, and just working with livestock. For some people it's easier working than working with people maybe, but it's very challenging, and there's a huge pool of people outside of agriculture, I think, that we can bring in. But then we need to think about, how do you set up, and this is the same for any business, be it in the farm itself, how do you set up a business that people want to work in? Everyone talks about economics and that it's all about money. My experience is not necessarily. Obviously people want to get value for what work that they do, but there's a whole other range of factors that people are inspired by, maybe, or motivated by is probably a better word. And I think for me, it's being involved in a team, looking at the outcomes, the positive outcomes, the challenges, but autonomy, so that they can actually, my spelling's atrocious, autonomy, actually be involved in the business. So when I see real success with people working in agriculture, it's people who focus on, farms who focus on what people want and actually ask the question, what you want. Obviously, it can be long working hours, so setting up the system for more manageable hours, and that's difficult. That was really interesting when I looked at some of the farms we visited. It was an aside to what I was doing, but they were really looking at that 35-hour work week and how the whole system worked. And as our farms get bigger, this is something that probably definitely can be done. When we look at bringing people in, training is really important, and I think there's lots of training out there. There's lots of great ag colleges, and I see it here in Ireland. There's lots of training that's available, but it can be a hard thing for somebody in the farm themselves to be a trainer, to train the trainee, but it definitely makes a difference. There's a cost for any business to do training, and there's that feeling then that, well, if I invest time and money, are they going to stay? Well, that comes back into the work environment and culture. One of my controversial things today is language is important, and I'm not being a pedantic Pat, but we use the word labour units on farm. When we talk about KPIs, if I have a large farm, I have 3 labour units or 2 labour units, I think it's the wrong language, because we're trying to bring people in. And I think in agriculture, we've got to reshape how we think and talk about people. We've got to see the opportunities on farm. We've got to see that there's a pool of people, probably outside and inside, that if we structure it correctly, that maybe it's not all about this, but there can be progression, part of something, and any good business will always bring in good people and make them part of it. So I suppose, what is the concept we're considering for today? Well, I think people seems to be the big driver in agriculture globally, and I've no doubt that that's going to be a challenge in the industry. People will talk about automation and robotics, and that has a role to play. But we can also look at how we set up the cultures within our business and look at the motivating factors. Yes, it takes time to train people. It's an investment of your time and money, but if we can get it right, there's real success out there, and I've seen that on farm. So concepts we're considering today a little bit different, but it is worth thinking about that there's huge opportunities where there's challenge. We need to come up with the solutions. They need to be smart and workable. We will make mistakes. Agriculture for me is, despite what everyone says, is an incredibly, livestock production is an incredibly exciting area, and I'm finding it hard to see anything else but excitement. Yes, there's challenges, but the opportunity is huge. I'm starting to get a bit long-winded here, but it's all about people. Thanks for listening.